Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Rei-Lin, and today I'm bringing you another tank review. This time, it's the Challenger 1 Falcon, a Tier 8 main battle tank. This is one of the two tanks that is part of the new Collector Edition package deal, the other being the M60-2000 that I've already done a review on. And as you can see, this thing is somewhat similar to the Challenger, except with this funky turret on it. It is a Falcon turret, and that is a tank by the Jordanian army, and they basically took a Challenger 1 hull, stuck their Falcon turret on it, which is an unmanned turret. Nobody sits inside that thing, and thus it gives it a lower profile and a little bit more crew protection because they're not sitting up in a turret that could get damaged and get people hurt. I'm going to jump pretty much right into the stats on this. If you're not interested in listening to the stats and just want to see the gameplay, you can click at the top of your screen right now. That'll whisk you away to the replay, and hopefully you'll see just how good this tank actually is. For the rest of us, let's go ahead and dive in feet first. I'm going to start off and compare this to its closest relative here, obviously being the Challenger 1 at Tier 7. And let's talk about the price, of course, real quick, since I said it is part of the Collector Edition. It comes with this tank, the Challenger 1 Falcon, at Tier 8 main battle tank, the M60-2000, a Tier 7 main battle tank, 15 million credits, and 90 days of premium for $100. It saves you $47 over buying all of these things separately, and so I think it's an okay deal. If it was more like $70 or $75, I honestly think that would be like the perfect price. It's basically that you're paying about $50 a piece for two main battle tanks, and you're getting a little, sprinkled on the side there with the credits and the premium time. But unfortunately, this is what's going to have to happen because this is the only way to get these two tanks. So let's jump in here and compare the Challenger 1 Falcon to our old friend, the Challenger 1. Just really quick, I'm mainly going to focus on the armor here. There are a few differences between them as far as the damage goes. As you can see, 515 damage, 514 millimeters of penetration on the Falcon, 470 damage, 423 millimeters on the Challenger 1. I don't have my Challenger 1 completely upgraded, but even without the full upgrades, you can see there's a very big loss in damage between the two tanks. And I have these set up exactly the same because they have the exact same retrofit slots. So between the two, you can see that the Challenger Falcon's doing a little bit more damage, and as such the damage per minute is a few hundred more, but the reload time is a little bit longer. But here's where I really wanted to focus. Challenger 1 has got a lot of health, 2,883, and of course that's with retrofits bumping that up. But as you can see, so does the Falcon. It has even more, 3,120. But this is a Tier 8, so you would expect there to be a little bit more health there. This is about average. I mean, because it comes with the retrofit slot to increase the health, this is a little bit higher than base. It's about 2,900 or so on the base health on the Falcon, so that's not too bad. It's really not. It's more than enough to carry you through almost any game you're going to come across. But the biggest thing I wanted to compare between the two, of course, is the armor. And it's looking pretty good for the Falcon because you can see right here, 355 in the front, 275 on the sides, 80 at the rear. The hull is exactly the same as the Challenger 1. It even has the same hull armor modifiers. It's made out of composite. It's got the same modifiers. It is essentially exactly what it looks like. It is a Challenger 1 hull. It doesn't fare nearly as good on the turret, however. 380 at the front, 200 on the side, and 50 at the rear. It is also a composite turret, and it has really good turret modifiers against all kinds of damage. So these values are much higher than they look like. But when you come over to the old Challenger, we got 436 millimeters in the front, 350 on the side, and 120 at the rear. And the modifiers, of course, are the same as on the Falcon, but these values are much more significantly higher, even though this tank is an entire tier lower than the Falcon. And it's mainly because you get an armor upgrade package for the Challenger 1 that adds extra protection on the turret. So the Challenger 1 is, as always, a mobile bunker, and thus it's winning hands down in the turret armor department. But the Falcon isn't faring too bad. These numbers are not bad for a Tier 8 main battle tank. Moving down to the speed, 55.8, 55.8, exactly the same. It's a little bit sluggish from 0 to 32 at 6.4 seconds versus the 5.84 seconds on the Challenger 1. So the Challenger 1 has a little get up and go, so it's not too bad. The whole traverse is just slightly slower, 21.9 degrees versus 22.3 degrees, but this will be going up slightly because of my crew. Camouflage really doesn't matter. They are identical, however. View range, 400 meters for both, identical. Cannon depression is 7 over the front, identical. However, it does lose a little bit. It's only got 1.5 degrees over the rear versus the Challenger's 3. So if you got to shoot over the rear end of your tank, just keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to get the gun down very, very far. The accuracy, 0.1, is going to be dropping a little bit better into the 0.09 range of the Challenger 1. Again, my crew will affect that. So nearly identical on the accuracy. Aim time just squeaks by 0.01 seconds over the Challenger 1. Again, crew will affect that. And the turret traverse is slightly faster on the Falcon at 31.55 degrees a second versus the Challenger's 30.47. So overall, the Challenger 1 Falcon holds up pretty well to the Challenger itself at Tier 7. It's got most of the armor. It has the exact same armor on the hull. It has more health. Does more damage. It's got a slightly longer reload time. It's not exactly that slow. It's decent on the accuracy. It's got okay gun depression. I mean, overall, it's a very, very nice tank. It just matches up to a Challenger. It's almost as good as the Challenger 1. However, this is a Tier 7 tank we're comparing the Falcon to, so let's get rid of our friend the Challenger and bring up the next boy in line here, the actual Tier 8, the C1 Ariete. Now this I don't own, so these are stock values on this tank. The armor will go up. It does get an armor upgrade package very similar to the Challenger 1, but as a stock tank, it just gives you a basic idea of what you can expect the Falcon to be. Already it does more damage with less penetration than the C1, as you can see, and this is with stock ammunition. So the Falcon doesn't have the most penetration of the Tier 8 main battle tank, so keep that in mind. The damage, obviously, per minute is not going to be very good on a stock C1. Even the reload time is much worse, but where the biggest comparison between these two is coming in is going to be on the armor and the health. Hit points 3,120 versus 2,350. Even with armor upgrades, this is still not going to come close to matching the Falcon's health. I mean, it'll get up there just like the Challenger 1 did, but I cannot see how you would ever get this over 3,000 health. It might be possible with further retrofits, but I mean, that's kind of low for a Tier 8 main battle tank, and even with hull upgrades, you're still going to be a little bit under the Falcon. But the armor, let's take a look at the hull. Now we know this is a Challenger 1 hull, 355 on the front, 275 on the side, and 80 at the rear. And the C1 does do pretty good at 362 in the front, but it only has 115 on the side and 40 at the rear. So looking right here at the base numbers, the Falcon just kind of, okay, yeah, it gives up, you know, some armor in the front, but it's over double on the side and double on the rear, and it's composite, and it has way better modifiers on the hull. So it looks like the Falcon wins hands down, but keep in mind these values are stock. The C1 does get an upgrade package which increases the side armor and the frontal armor by a little bit and the rear armor by a little bit, and it does put it pretty much right on par with the Falcon. Where the difference here again comes in is the turret. With 380, 250 versus 400, 295. But the turret modifiers are still higher on the Falcon over the C1. Now these modifiers, like I said, and armor do go up when you start unlocking some armor upgrades. But even with that, the modifiers don't necessarily go up any higher than the Falcon's. So overall, you're giving up a little bit of armor here and there on the Falcon versus the C1. Even fully upgraded, the C1 is a beast. Don't get me wrong. This is a great tank. But the Falcon is not much of a slouch either. So between the two, it holds up pretty good. For a premium Tier 8 main battle tank, the Falcon holds up very well because of the great modifiers on the hull and on the turret, even when comparing it to a stock C1 Ariete. However, we're going to check out what is different. Obviously, the max speed, 55.8 on the Falcon, 64.8 on the C1, significantly faster. And even stock, 0 to 32, is almost as good as almost a fully upgraded Falcon's 0 to 32 of 6.4. It's just barely lagging behind on a stock C1. So the C1's going to win in a race, hands down. 21.9 degrees on the hull traverse on the Falcon, 27.9 on the stock C1. This thing is definitely much more mobile than the Falcon. Camouflage, well, it's better on the C1, but who cares? It's a main battle tank. The vision range is a little bit better on the Falcon at 400 versus the 369 of the C1. But again, this is going to be upgraded slightly with your crew and your retrofits and whatnot. It probably will not reach over the 400 meters of the Challenger 1 Falcon. Now, it does beat the Challenger Falcon in gun depression over the front at 9 degrees, but it's actually half a degree less over the rear than the Falcon. So, you know, give and take a little bit. The accuracy is a lot worse on the C1, but again, this will improve as you upgrade it. But as a stock, 0.14 on the C1 is much worse, obviously, than the 0.10. The aim time, again, stock values 2.3 seconds versus 3.5 seconds. But I can see even with some upgrades and crew training and whatnot, that's barely going to come down probably anywhere close to even 2.5 seconds just because of the retrofit slots that you have. So keep that in mind. The aim time is going to be pretty long even on a fully upgraded C1. Now, the turret traverse, 31.55 degrees versus 33 degrees. The C1 is obviously better, and this number is only going to get better with your retrofits and your crews. So overall, the C1 is a great tank. It has a lot of good armor. The modifiers aren't quite as high, but it does get armor upgrade packages to help assist with the lower modifiers just by having a lot of numbers, especially on the sides of the hull and the turret. The Challenger 1 Falcon definitely holds up on its own as a Tier 8, a very good Tier 8 main battle tank. It's got the armor, it has okay speed, it has an okay gun, it does okay damage, it has okay gun handling. Overall, it's just kind of right in the middle between any of the other Tier 8 main battle tanks. And just having the C1 here, you can see similar kind of design going on as far as protection. Now, one thing you do want to keep in mind, however, is that all the other turrets have this weird slope in the front, and they're kind of sloped on the sides and rear. As you can see here, this turret is pretty flat. I mean, it's exactly flat. It's a flat surface on the side, on the rear. So if you continually take damage, it's probably going to be because somebody is smacking you in the side or the rear of your very big, low profile, but your turret is pretty flat. I mean, the front has got this weird angle, and it's really hard to get through that with that kind of angling. But the sides, be careful. This thing will get hit in the sides of the turret and take damage. The armor is good there, but it's not that good there. So, as you can see, this tank does hold up pretty well statistically to the C1 and even the Challenger 1. The Falcon is not quite as good as the Challenger 1 because of the massive difference on the armor of the turret. Now, it is a lower profile, the turret is smaller, it is unmanned, so it doesn't take as much damage even when it does get hit because it is an unmanned turret. But overall, this tank is great. It really is worth the price of the package almost by itself. I really have a lot of fun with this tank. I think it looks pretty cool, and it just plays really well. It's just a Tier 8 Challenger 1 with a slightly different turret on it. Overall, I think it is definitely worth the weight of the package deal. The M60-2000 is a good tank, don't get me wrong. I do like that tank. It's unique. It's a Frankenstein monster tank, as I said in my review, and it holds up very well on its own for Tier 7, and this holds up very well as a Tier 8. And you'll see some of in the replay of me taking quite a number of shots from multiple angles, just like you would in your Challenger 1. And I can see why so many people love the Challenger 1. It is a great tank, and I think this is definitely a great tank. Do I think it's worth it? Yeah. The M60 itself is a good tank, and throwing in the extra premium time and the extra credits does make the pot a little sweeter, and then you get to this thing, and finally we got a real tier 8 premium main battle tank that doesn't give up anything just for, you know, being what it is. It is a premium tank that hangs just as well as fully upgraded tier 8 main battle tanks in all the other trees, and I really had a lot of fun with this thing. And I think if you're going to buy a collector edition, this one is pretty damn good. If you're a tank collector, you probably already own this and whatnot, but if you're worried that you're going to get, you know, a couple of mediocre tanks, no, don't worry about it. The last collector edition obviously had lower tier tanks, and it was a good deal. That's the only way to get those tanks, but those tanks were, you know, tier 3s and 4s and things like that. So it was a good deal because you got multiple tanks, but the tanks you got weren't really that great. And now you've got a couple of tanks rather than 3 or 4 tanks. You only have 2, but you get a lot of money to upgrade them. You get a lot of premium time so that you can spend some time earning a lot of free reputation by grinding these things in battle, because they are premium tanks. So you get that as a little bit of a boost, and both of the tanks that come with the deal are really good, and the Falcon, I think, is definitely really good. So, going to talk a little bit about our commander. As always, Maximilian is my man. He is my main battle tank commander. He is my everything commander when it comes to premium tanks. If you don't have Maximilian, use your best judgment. None of the commanders are really good for a main battle tank. They have pros and cons to everyone, so take that under your own advisement. It only has 2 crew, and of course that is because it is an unmanned turret, so you're going to be missing out on your 3rd or maybe even your 4th person in your crew, but that's okay. So let's talk here, of course, off-road driving. This thing is sluggish. It's a main battle tank that are meant to be sluggish. This is still a sluggish tank. You want to get your speed on off-road terrain increased by 10% as soon as possible, because it does help with that sluggishness. Spin the wind is definitely going to be the next thing that I take. The whole traverse speed is slow. So again, these 2 things together will turn this tank around much quicker and get you going a lot quicker as well. So very good choices there. Aim speed improved by 10%. Of course, it has a long ass aim time. You saw that the C1 the default was over 3.5 seconds. This thing starts out around 3 seconds. And so I put a lot of time and effort getting the aim speed down a little bit, because yes, this thing is tough, but if people have time to aim at you, especially on your turret, there's a good chance that you're going to take some damage from that. So aim speed improved. Definitely want to do that. Probably going to definitely take rapid fire after that to get my rate of fire increased. This thing doesn't shoot as fast as I would like. I would really like to get this thing down to about 7 seconds, if not under 7 seconds. And as far as I'm concerned, once I get rapid fire, that's probably going to be the case. Anything else that you want to take? Not really. I mean, this thing does get 2 different kinds of ammunition, but in this case, having rapid fire along with quick draw is pretty much going to be my choice. However, you can do what you want. It is up to each person to decide. You do get 2 types of ammunition here. We get our standard armor piercing. That has 515 damage with 514 millimeters of penetration, but you also get a little heat, and as you can see, 658 damage, which is not bad at all for a main battle tank damage, and 443 millimeters of penetration. If you want to get really high scores in PvE, you want to be loading your heat. However, this is a tier 8 main battle tank, so almost 90% of the tanks that you're going to be shooting at, especially in PvE, are going to have a lot of ERA armor. You're not going to go through them with the heat. A lot of Terminators, Terminator 2s, and things like that, T90s, T90 MSs. You're just not going to do any damage. It's a waste of time to load the heat against them. And overall, you can only carry 48 rounds, so keep that in mind when you decide how you would like to split these up. That is personal preference. I always go with more armor piercing and less heat, but you may change that at your whim. Going to the consumables, of course I take the most expensive thing I can: spare parts, energy drink, and medical kit. You can swap these out at any time for the repair kit and the first aid kit to save yourselves a little bit of money. You could take the fire extinguisher instead of the energy drink if you wish, or you could even take the protein bar instead of the energy drink to still get a stat boost, but at a significantly reduced price. Now, one thing I will mention about the fire extinguishers, especially on this tank in particular, This tank I've actually been caught on fire twice in PvE. So this thing is apparently very prone to catching on fire. However, in PvE, it's not like a fire in, say, like World of Tanks, which just seems to burn away 75 or 80% of somebody's health if they don't have a fire extinguisher. When this thing catches on fire, it only does about 150 damage. So it does even less damage than just a normal shot. But if it happens multiple times, that fire may get worse. So if you're worried about that, you could swap out the energy drink for your fire extinguisher. This does seem to catch on fire pretty damn easy. I'm actually surprised. So that might become a concern later on. And of course I take the field rebuild kit. This heals you for 100% of your health and gives you full reload if you're alive. If you get killed in battle for whatever reason, you can use this. You will respawn with 60% of your health and with a full reload. Very, very useful. Also quite expensive, almost twice as much as the high tier field maintenance kit, which only gives you 20% of your health back and gives you all of your ammunition back. This only works if you're alive. So if this is all you have, don't wait until the last second to heal yourself. You'll find out real quick that you can still die, even getting a 20% health boost. But no matter which one you pick, please take one if you're going to do PvE content. It really does save the day in a lot of situations. Retrofits. This tank gets a universal, 2 armor slots, and a technology slot. This is exactly the same as the Challenger 1 slots. So, right off the bat, I'm taking the gyroscopic stabilizers in my universal slot because I need this thing to shoot and reload quicker and aim faster. So rate of fire, aim time improved with the gyroscopic stabilizers. You could swap it out for the chrome barrel lining if you wanted some more accuracy or damage, or of course my favorite, the experimental propellant, for just pure damage. But this tank is not necessarily about the damage. You really need to get out there and make your shots count as often as you can, and to make up for the slightly lower damage, and this is what I decided to do. Armor slot, internal hull reinforcement, of course, more health, more lasting power. There's no reason to take any of this other stuff. It doesn't have wheels. It doesn't need a reinforced ammo rack. Just pure health is good. But in the other armor slot, I went ahead with getting the engine health up because, well, don't want them to knock my engine out if they should catch me on fire. And it gives me more health. So your big health boost right here. You can swap them out. You could go with the ammo rack if that is what you want. You also get health with that. But I went more with the engine. This thing does not need a busted engine. Braided Kevlar wiring is what I went for to give my crew a little bit of a boost, almost as good as just going with the pure intercom systems to give them a flat boost. But this also saves a lot of my components. Since this thing does catch on fire, the fire can wreck your components, so I went ahead and went with this just to help that not happen. Basically, if I get caught on fire, I don't burn out quite as many of my modules. So that is personal preference, and that, in a nutshell, is the Challenger 1 Falcon Tier 8 Premium Main Battle Tank. I think this tank is amazingly fun. It is just as fun as the Challenger 1, only it's now at Tier 8, and it's, in a lot of ways, it's better than the C1 Ariete. In some ways, it's just a premium tank that's like a C1, only slightly worse in some areas, slightly better in others. So overall, though, very good tank, a whole hell of a lot of fun. I do suggest that you pick up the new collector edition, if for nothing more than to get this tank. It really is really good and a lot of fun. And just to show you how well this thing does hold up against other Tier 8s and Tier 9s in PvE, I do have a replay to show you, and I hope you do enjoy it. Hope you stick around, and I'll catch you on the battlefield. And here we are on Operation Meltdown. Now, this is normally a PvP map that they recently made into a PvE map. So being that it's mostly a PvP map, I've never really been on this map, and this was one of the first games I actually drove the Falcon basically in, and so you're going to see a lot of noobish mistakes, and I don't do particularly well in this match. I mean, I don't die or anything crazy like that, but I really can't keep up, as you can see, with the rest of my team. So pretty much all Tier 9s, and they seem to be in the same clan, so most likely they're on voice comms of some kind. And so, yeah, keeping up with them is going to be kind of a challenge, and you'll see at the end with the results that it's really hard to keep up when there's a lot of people that have higher tier tanks than you and know what they're doing. And I'm just trudging along here. I should have moved up behind my team, but I decided, yeah, I'll try and see what's up here because I didn't really know what I was doing and where I was going. I just wanted to get a feel for what this tank would do. Off-road, uphill, downhill, on a road. As you can see, the speed on this tank is not bad at all. If you get a little bit of a downslope, you can really get it cruising pretty well. Oh, hello, artillery. Ah, yeah, they probably shouldn't park artillery right on the road, but then again, hey, more damage for me, right? I got some tanks down below. Now, this tank does have 7 degrees of gun depression, but that's not nearly enough for me to just pull up over the side rail there on my left and shoot down at the enemy tanks, but it will confuse them because I am spotted, so they do turn here and there to look up at me, giving my team time to put in some decent shots. That was a bit of a flub shot. He did wiggle a little bit. The T-90, the weak point right there on the very lower front plate on that little bit of a tip that just sort of juts out is a weak point, but you have to have very good accuracy, and they pretty much need to be flat facing you and not moving for you to hit it with any kind of regularity. So I flubbed it. Now here I do decide to do a little mountain goating there, just hoping that I didn't slide all the way off and injure my tank, but as you can see, that it was no real big deal. We got a Challenger 2 on our team and M1A2 Abrams on our team. We also got the B1 Draco up there, as you can see, which is a monster for damage because it is an autocannon that is very, very nasty. It has no armor, so it is kind of one of those tanks that you need to not be very aggressive with, or you may end up eating it pretty hard. But since he was going over here, I thought, well, okay, he must know where the tanks are going to spawn, and of course they spawn up above me, and so I just hightail it over here to the road. Want to get a little bit, or I thought I was going to hightail it to the road and circle up there where the Draco is, but I thought, well, since they're up there, I'll just circle around down here. And as you can see, the speed stays up. 43, 44 kilometers an hour, that's not bad. And having the off-road terrain skill doesn't help you avoiding rocks, apparently, but it does help you get on, anything that's not considered concrete or a road is good for helping you go through anywhere else, as you can see. Now, uphill, the engine does struggle quite a bit, as you can see. It's not nearly TOG status, but it doesn't go that fast uphill. Now, this is an A5. As long as he keeps pointing his side to me, I can tear him up pretty good. The penetration on the Falcon is not that great. It's good, it's average, but it's more on the lower end of average, if anything. So you're generally not going to be able to go through even same tier main battle tanks from the front outside of shooting weak points. I flubbed the shot there. As you can see, there is a silhouette of the entire tank, even though parts of his tank are hidden from me behind the hill. I really wish they would change that to where it would only light up the part of the tank you can actually shoot at. But I flubbed a shot. That's just how it goes. Obviously, more tanks have spawned in this little bit of a town area here, and I'm never going to be able to catch up to them. Some tanks are spawning behind us now. Looks like a Mirkava. And a Stingray of some kind. Yeah, Stingray 2. So I move over to assist. We got a Thunderbolt on our team, so he's one of the quickest tanks on our team. Very good penetration. He'll have very little trouble actually taking any of these tanks down that we might face. But I'm trying to push forward to kind of be a target because I wanted to know, was this thing armored enough for taking on tier 8s, 9s, and 10s? And I'm happy to report that, yeah, I can take on pretty much any tank, tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, easily in this, because the armor is still very good. I mean, it is a Challenger 1 hull with a few modifications. The weakest point of the tank, honestly, is the side armor and some of the turret, because the turret is kind of big and flat. And it does turn slow, but all of those kind of things, like turning slow, the hull traverse and the turret traverse, if you start taking the skills for your crew, it can be pretty damn good. tank, when it comes to getting those values up, it's not going to be very slow. I mean, the turret's not a big giant manned turret with all this ammunition stored in it. It's an unmanned turret, and it doesn't swivel that slow. And when you add on the extra bit of the crew and some of the retrofits, if you need to, you can get this thing to spin on a dime fairly quickly, especially for a main battle tank. For something as big as a Challenger 1 hull, you can get this thing moving pretty good. I mean, obviously you're going to be sacrificing probably damage somewhere, maybe aim time. And as you can see right there, I cannot go through the frontal anywhere except for the very weak point right there on top, the view hatch on the M1 Abrams. I can do some damage there. It's not going to take full damage because it's basically a module. And you'll see even here in just a second, I'm going to take a shot at the rear end of his turret, and it still did not penetrate the turret. And so somewhat weak on the penetration for the Falcon. So keep that in mind. You're going to want to have a lot of side shots and rear shots on a lot of tanks, or bully them and go right up into them and just focus on their weak points. You're not going to be a Thunderbolt. You're not going to be a Stingray type of tank where you can just plow through anything with your very good penetration. Now we're going across country again. Here we go. Got my friend right there, the A2 coming up. You can see that I'm actually outrunning him, and unfortunately gravity between these two tanks increased when we got close to each other, and the Falcon's ass kind of wiggled over into his, and it slowed us down. But you see I'm right back up to 50 kilometers an hour. There is a little bit of a downslope here. I'm off-road, so I'm getting that extra 10% acceleration, and it maintains that pretty damn well. I mean, you can see this is not a slow tank once you get it moving. If anything, it's just a sluggish acceleration. I decide, well, I'm going 50. Bam, we'll just ram him. So 128 ramming damage, not too spectacular. You're never going to see the values like you would in, say, World of Tanks with a KV-5 running into people from off a cliff doing 600-700 damage. But, you know, whatever. A little more damage, and it really didn't even hurt me at all. Now I get to bully this Thunderbolt. Now, even with his awesome penetration on that gun, you can see he's just shooting and shooting and shooting. He's doing nothing to me whatsoever. And I'm glad of that. I love bullying the tanks in the Challenger just because the bots are aiming. You can see his gun is pointing down. He is trying to shoot a weak point either on my lower front plate or right in where my gun is, somewhere in there. He's looking for a weak point, and I'm glad of that. The bots are not always too stupid. They do tend to aim for certain parts of your tank that isn't not just center of mass. And I'm thankful of that, and I'm sure that later on down the road these bots are going to get even more aggressive, and I'll take their time a lot more and aim more. Now here comes my favorite part in this replay. Coming up, okay, now I'm facing an A6, and as you see, there's nowhere I can shoot him at all. Even the lower front plate, I can't go through him. Even the side right there was a little bit too much of an angle, and I could not go through it. Now this part you're going to see is funny. Now he shoots me, and guess what? For the first time ever, you've seen it live. I caught on fire. Now, unlike World of Tanks, it seems that catching on fire in Armor Warfare is not that detrimental to your health. I lost a couple of hundred health from being on fire and just letting it burn out. I mean, I did not take an excessive amount of damage. I've seen tanks in World of Tanks take incredible amounts of fire damage, pretty much warranting that you take a fire extinguisher. And in Armor Warfare, I just still, and at least maybe it's a different thing in PvE, but I see no reason to take the fire extinguisher. I took what was the equivalent of a normal shot, maybe a little bit less than a normal shot if he had just penetrated me with the shot, as opposed to setting me on fire with the shot. So as you can see, this tank has a lot of health, so I could take some damage. It's towards the end of the game. We're down to 1:30 left on the clock. And now it's just trying to get moving around here. And as you can see, I do move fairly decent for a tank this size. And I'm trying to get into doing as much damage as I can. I'm up to over 12,000 damage, which sounds like a lot. And for a main battle tank isn't bad. But you'll see at the end of the game that even doing this much damage is nowhere close to something like the Draco or even the M8 or the Challenger 2. Pretty much everyone else on my team, except for about the A2, was doing a very good amount of damage. And that's the reason why this seems like it's nearly an effortless game, is that I have a whole team of people that are working together. And so when you get that going on, PvE is not that much of a challenge, and I'm hoping that eventually we will get the harder difficulties and get some extra AI. I mean, you see he's just driving right at me, and the Draco is just pinning him over and over in the butt. So as you can see, we're just hunting down the last of the tanks as fast as we can so we can get some extra damage. I saw that my Challenger 2 looks like he was down there facing off, so I knew the Challenger 2, there's no danger whatsoever of a Challenger 2 dying. I see that his health is kind of low, and I was like, well, okay, I'll go over here and support him, but with only 7 seconds left, I'm just not going to be able to make it, and at this point, the game's over, and we win. But I wanted to try anyway. So at the end of the day, it was a good game, but there wasn't much action going on just because this map is so big and spread out. I really wish they'd throw some extra spawns at you for this, but hey, I'll take a good victory over a humiliating loss anytime. Here we are, we got back in the garage, 16,000 reputation. Now you see I'm almost last, but hey, I actually beat the Challenger 2 on the damage. The Draco obviously cleaned up. I mean, you can see the amount of damage an auto loader can do. It's rather crazy when you see that kind of damage, but he's also very squishy. But look at the damage that I mitigated. Almost 12,000 damage I mitigated from those tier 8s, 9s, and 10s shooting at me and failing to do anything whatsoever to me. Got a teamwork medal, did 6,400 spotting, 11 assists. It's not bad, in my opinion. I think that was an okay game. And that's kind of what you're going to have to expect in the Challenger 1 Falcon. There is nothing wrong, in my opinion, with this tank. It is just as good as any other tier 8 main battle tank in the game, but it is also a premium tank, and that, I think, is the biggest reason I really, really enjoy it. That it is a premium tank that doesn't suck and is, I think, one of the most fun in the game at this point, especially for the premiums. So, anyway, if you like this tank and you're willing to shell out the $100, and you're going to get the M60-2000, obviously, and you're going to get 15 million credits, and you're going to get 90 days of premium time, even if you didn't get anything but these 2 premium tanks, I still think the package is not that bad of a deal, because you're going to run close to $35 to $40 normally if you were going to spend the gold anyway. So, overall, I think this package is better. It's a better collector edition than the last collector edition, which was mainly, low-level tanks. Now, they were unique tanks, don't get me wrong, but they're low-tier tanks. And getting a tier 7 and then a tier 8, especially a decent tier 8 like the Falcon, I think it's worth it. I honestly do. It's worth it just because it's higher tier, so you're going to make a little bit more reputation. You're going to make a lot more credits. And this tank has just as much protection, I think, as any other tier 8. And it plays really good. I mean, it's a little bit sluggish on acceleration. You're not going to win any awards for top speed or reload times or even damage, but you can sit there and weather the storm just as well as you could in the Challenger 1. So overall, great tank. I really like it. I hope you'll like it too. And that's pretty much going to do it for this video. If you liked it, if I helped you out, please press the like button down below. It helps on the channel a lot. And if you have not had a chance to subscribe to my channel, you can click down at the bottom of your screen right now. That'll get you all the latest updates when I put up a new video, whether it's on Armored Warfare or anything else I think you guys and gals might enjoy. Anyway, that wraps it up. Take care out there, and I'll talk to you all next time.